Hi, this is Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. I'm the host of Consciousness of Economics, and today is the second show of Consciousness of Economics on our new network, a spiral network, a self-empowerment network. And we're really excited about this network because we're going to bring you ways on how to actually create change in your life, move you forward, and help you to awaken to the greater power that's within you. Today, one of my favorite people in the world is Nagual Lujan Matus. And if you haven't seen the previous interview that I did with him, you can catch that on Consciousness of Economics and the Urban Farm Project on YouTube channel. And I believe that the last interview we did was September 17th. 2015. And today we're going to catch up with Lujan with some more questions and move it forward kind of information with Lujan about consciousness and how we can become more conscious through practice and being in the present moment and using our awareness, our attentions, and our understandings. So good morning, Lujan. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Bridget?
I'm doing wonderful. So I was going to give you a couple minutes before we dish into some of the questions I have and some of the other work that I wanted to ask you about that I've been working with out of Whisperings of the Dragon.
Yeah.
And so, but let me give you a little bit of time to kind of catch up with your life and give us any information that you want about what's going on with you currently. And if you want to talk about the workshops that are coming or anything else. So go ahead.
Well, gosh, we've got a workshop coming up in Thailand in October. Yeah. It's basically being featured on my website at the moment, and it's in the events section. And that's basically about it. It'll be a workshop on the Golden Lotus, which is a very powerful form, which is kind of like it's difficult to learn, but it only takes 10 or 15 minutes to do it. But in the same breath, it's very easy.
Yeah, I saw the photos that you guys had for the workshop. It looks great.
Yeah.
I'm in, we're in the middle of winter here, freezing in the desert. So all that tropical water looked really good to me.
Yeah. I can hear a bit of wind in the background there. Is that wind?
Yeah. There is a little bit of wind, heat, wind, all the above. Okay. So, let me see what else. Okay, so last time that we talked and during the interview, people can go back to that interview. Also, Lujan Matus, his websites are Parallel Perceptions. He's also Parallel Perceptions on Facebook if you want to reach him there. Also, he has lots of videos on the YouTube channel. All you have to do is look up Lujan Matus, Nagual Lujan Matus, and you'll see a lot of amazing videos and work if you want to catch up with him there. Plus, he has several amazing books. One that I'm working on finishing now, which is Whisperings of the Dragon. Also, there's Parallel Perceptions, his original book, and I think The Awakening of the Third Eye. So please, dive deeply into his information that he offers us because his information is life-changing. Okay, so one of the questions that we got was, how do you view awakening?
My gosh, that's a very difficult question in terms of how does anybody view awakening. I mean, the only way you can really communicate awakening is to be awake. because all the talking in the world won't really convey your own awakening, your own epiphanies, your own living essence has to be communicated through the vehicle of understanding, depending on the person that you're communicating with. So awakening is a very, very personal affair, very honest affair that goes between two individuals to put a light on whatever is necessary to be aware of.
Do you think that there's a moment that people can touch on, you know, like where there's that self-realization where they'll notice, or they'll all of a sudden notice maybe changes in their life or changes on their radar that lets them know that they kind of...
Yeah, I know where you're going. You can't really put a you know, like a marker on, say I've achieved this, or you know, it's if you're looking for something, you'll never find it. If you expect to find what you're looking for, you'll discover something else, and you may not discover what you really want, because you may you know, run into something which isn't necessary, because the self sense of wanting something is not the self sense of actually achieving the fact that you don't want anything. And when you don't want anything, then the best of you arrives.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, I like that. Okay. No, it's a... Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm bumping.
No, it was awesome. Well, the thing is that you, I think in order to be awake and have been awake, you know, that you've been awake for a while, if we want to call it that, you can create a vocabulary.
Let's look at that. You say you've been awake for a while. Now, what should I do with that information in terms of me being awake? I'd have to look at the program in terms of what you're applying as language. You're awake, so that validates my position and gives me something higher, or you put me on a pedestal. Now, when you say that, then I have to look at what you're saying, because we all have to be awake together. You know, and being awake doesn't mean somebody takes a position that they're awake. It's a little bit different to that. It's more of, instead of being awake, it's being aware, because being aware illuminates everything around you. And some people will say, well, I'm awake because it's the daytime. That doesn't necessarily mean so. You could be sleeping even though you're awake. And in that slumber, a lot of people say that they're aware. And it's the self-validation which is the biggest issue in terms of bringing light to something which can't be seen.
Yeah, and this is exactly the topic I'm working on personally. Just so you know. I knew we'd probably work around that topic today, of course. Okay, so there another question was asking about recapitulation and purposes, and what methods do you think are the best?
Well, recapitulation, you could say, well, let's have a look at the word recapitulate. It's actually looking for an event which is maybe you define as something you need to look at. When you define that you need to look at something, you're defining with a consciousness that led you to the position to make you believe you need to look at something. So if you go methodically through your life to actually find something, you will be determining where you look for that with the consciousness that you've arrived upon. And you arrived upon that consciousness by living the indiscriminate awareness of your past influencing that particular moment that wants you to look back. And it's never what you want to look at that's necessary. It's what you need to look at, and that's very difficult to recapitulate. unless you're honestly within your true moment. And when people are honestly in their true moments, they don't need to track back. They just live the moment that they're in and discover who they are in that interaction. And that's true recapitulation, because you then begin to look at who you are and what you're accessing in that moment. Yeah?
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and for recapitulation really to occur, you need a clear individual on the other end of your communication scale to be actually reflecting back to you who you are. Now, it's a big subject, recapitulation, because it's actually, recapitulation is not a personal affair, it's a communal affair. So if I say that I'm going to recapitulate, then you isolate yourself in the bubble to say, well, I'm individualizing myself to go back into recapitulating what happened to me versus the energy production between two people 10 years ago, or between me and somebody else 2 years ago, myself and somebody else. Yeah. So this is yeah. So when you go back to recapitulation, you look at the word communion, and you say, well, what has recapitulation got to do with communion? Now, for you to discover somebody else, you have to begin to commune with yourself, and the only way you can commune with yourself is to find out who's really inside of you. And the only way you can find out who is really inside of you is to really admit to yourself your failings in terms of your moral imperatives. So if you can't work with your moral imperatives, which means I don't want to be this way, I want to be that way, then you've got that dilemma of separation within. So then it's very difficult to go back and have a look, because the dilemma of separation then causes a very strange rift in one's consciousness. So communication is really where true recapitulation occurs. And to really communicate, you have to be empty of yourself. And that's what everybody's after. They're after pure inner silence. They're after the real emptiness within. And when you find the true emptiness within, then you actually invite somebody else to come into those empty spaces to commune with you. And then you begin to recapitulate that particular individual. And as that occurs, they find out where their moral imperatives are faltering. And this can occur from both sides, but usually emptiness is one of the primary components of real communication, in terms of recapitulating your real moments in a state of communion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I spent. I spent about 6 years doing pretty, tough recapitulating, based off, Carlo Castaneda's work, and also a few other people, who have their work on the market. In one of the books, I'm not sure what book it was in that you wrote about it, but you had a different type of.
Yeah, Shadows in the Twilight. There was one book you didn't mention. That was probably I spoke about recapitulation with Bill, one of my students, about how to go about discovering who you really are, or he was trying to discover who he really was. But to discover who you really are, you have to define the gilded cage, which is the trap of our program, which is instilled within us as a language. And the reflection of that language reveals people, and not only within their words, but within the indications of their body language and how they function emotionally. Yeah?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I really learned from recapitulation, when I first started doing it, I started doing it because I didn't have enough power. I wasn't generating enough power to actually heal my brain cancer, my brain tumor. And so I started to do it to rechannel, places in my life that I had allowed my power to go, without making a choice about it. And also it comes to, what kind of power did I let go? Was I angry? Was I resentful? In these situations, and there was a manipulation situation, or I may have been trying to manipulate a situation. However, the situation was happening between the community or the other person, like you were saying. And so I had to go back and look at, the sequences of events that took place before I could, utilize that energy that had been lost and that was still kind of leaking back into that past moment. There was like a channel that was still going there, and be able to cut that leak off and, be able to heal it. And having a dialogue, and sometimes the dialogue with the person in the energy field was sad, or because you didn't really realize where they were at that time. And when you're talking to their energy body, you find out things that you didn't know about the situation when it was happening at the physical time, right? So for me, it was mostly about getting in touch with, really put a light on even my subtleties of where, I might get a little bit emotional because I feel like I'm exposing myself, but where you hit those moments where you realize, you're trying to get away from manipulating and controlling, and you don't want to be around people who are manipulating and controlling, but there's subtleties within you that are manipulative and controlling, and also involved in these situations. So
yeah, now let's look at one thing. Look at your emotion now. The destabilizing feeling that you have within the emotion, in terms of you stating that you have recapitulated that. Now, I would say you haven't really gone back and done that job, but your moment now is revealing who you are. It doesn't really matter whether you feel weakened or whether you've done something wrong or whether somebody's done something wrong with you. It all comes back to your own moral imperative. So your moral imperative says, now I feel hurt. So that's part of your program. So that's what your recapitulation has missed. Now, your moral imperative will use that program to justify feeling a certain way. It can even justify going back and recapitulating. Now, if you were truly to recapitulate with that feeling, it wouldn't arise up so strong, because you know that you can't recognize it as yourself from those times. It was you can recognize it now because you're referring back to that, but it's actually the feeling you've got. So that's more deep than your thought process. It's more it's insidiously well, I forgot I can't even say the word. It's connected to your social programming in terms of your emotion. Now, what I'd say to do with that is, when you have that emotion, is that if you speak to somebody that doesn't hold you in that position where you're feeling sorry for yourself, and make you reflect on that, is it just you use, instead of doing that, realize that you've got that feeling. Don't display that feeling to anybody, but use your ability to have compassion and an understanding for yourself, and then communicate with somebody else with that energy of that emotion in a way which is constructive. And then you discover your moral imperative. Your moral imperative is that you add yourself to your next circumstance in service of that circumstance. Now, the person won't know that you've got that emotion. So when you give yourself selflessly to the next circumstance, you're actually using the energy of that emotion to support somebody without telling them that you're going through that, and it cleanses you. So that's a form of recapitulation, in terms of really using the very, very deep emotion, which is a catalyst for you to actually communicate now, because that catalyst shows that you haven't really dealt with what you were recapitulating. So in kindness, I listen to that and understand that. So for me to be in the position to actually listen to it, I have to be as kind as possible, of service to that feeling, and speak and lovingly as I can to that, because then you only have the possibility to use that feeling in a loving understanding comparable way in your next circumstance in terms of being of service and using your moral imperative. Because when you listen to my voice, you hear that my moral imperative is not to capture you in the cage of the social dilemma, which starts from emotion and then becomes justified through thought processes. And that's how people get nasty and how people do bad things to other people. And that's why you're feeling the way you are, because you feel wronged. Now, the moment you feel wronged, you've actually used part of the program. And you can't really recapitulate with that feeling. The only thing you can do with that feeling is to use the energy of that, which has landed inside of you, and the program has deemed that you should feel offended or feel something because of that. So the program then propels you to look back at the situation and then to push it forward in this situation. So your moral imperative would be to actually see it, feel the energy of it, and if you've wronged your circumstance before, all you've got to do is just say, I'm sorry to that circumstance, know that you love yourself, and know that you can forgive yourself and forgive the circumstance before you. That's all you need to really do. Once you do that, then the past event has no power over you anymore. Yeah? And the next circumstance has the power of your loving essence of actually adding your true self, which is the generation of energy from that feeling, which came up naturally inside of you because maybe you were tired or someone triggered you. So you recapitulate by using the frequency or the essence of that feeling as true communication, which has affixed to it a moral imperative, which the social order in terms of communication within the gilded cage that we are in terms of that slave language, unlocks the cage you're in to actually say, well, I'm going to make a statement of power and be kind to this next individual and listen to what they've got to say, even though I understand more deeply than what they think. You don't even let them know that you understand more deeply. You're just as kind as you can be at that particular moment, at the level that you're allowed to be kind and understanding. And that's where your moral imperative is. You know exactly where you stand, because you can't add anything more to that to elevate yourself with understanding. You can't retract anything of yourself to be in that circumstance, because that's underneath the circumstance. So you live a middle path, and you do exactly what you need to do. And as your moral imperative adds itself to that circumstance, you discover who you really are in that circumstance, in reflection of the way that you've added yourself with your personal power instead of the program. So then the person will never know what you've gone through, but see who you are, and that's you stepping forward into your new self, or into the self which has been captured and imprisoned to such a degree that you can't find it. So you find it by doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of the work, that. And I want to thank you for giving your time and doing these interviews so people can get to know you a little bit better and
I don't know.
See how amazing and really be able to listen so that they can really see how amazing your work is.
You know what I'd say to that? Really?
What?
My work is only amazing as the people that I've met. So my moral imperative is to not walk above that, but walk in the midst of it. And while I walk in the midst of it, I disappear in that crowd. So I truly am myself, and truly being myself means my moral imperative then equalizes the circumstances and truly reveals our humanness or our capacity to be in a state of communion, which reveals the person for who they really are. And within that very, very sublime statement, you find your position exactly.
I just sometimes you answer some of the things I have on my little checklist, right? Because I prepared quite a bit, and there were a lot of things I wanted to talk to you about that are kind of, I think, relevant to becoming more aware, or non-aware, I guess, at the same time.
Communication as a human being or an earthling is a very, very interesting thing. What if I said that everybody has been communicating incorrectly, and they don't understand that there's so much more, because we're empathic. We're so empathic that we don't even need to speak. We just need to realize the other person has arrived inside of us, and then we speak the realizations of that person because of that arrival. And the only way that arrival can occur if you disappear from your own internal spaces in terms of who you think you are. Once you realize that you're nobody, then everybody has a chance to get inside of you. Once they get inside of you, you become them. And once you become them, then the true communication really occurs, because their voice will bring a reckoning to their consciousness in terms of what is necessary to listen to. And also the speaker or the receiver will be constantly listening to what they're saying, as if they didn't know they were going to say it. So then you're speaking exactly from your heart. You're speaking the truth. You're speaking the momentum of the other person's feeling. And that feeling then arrives inside of you and gives your own voice impetus to speak the words that you need to hear, and the words that they expected to be spoken.
Yeah. Well, and I think I totally agree with that. No, I mean, we, for whatever reason, we end up here in this reality, or whatever holographic universe, whatever we want to call it. For sure, the program of training started early. Very early, and has had full control. And sometimes talking about that, one of the things that kind of struck me in the head from our last conversation was when we started off the interview, and you were talking about, when you pass on from this world, that you're pretty much alone, like floating around. And after the last interview, I really started thinking, like, I still, even though I'm slowing myself down and I'm in the present moment, and, I really work on the practices that I'm working on, and I'm really trying to free myself in a way against all odds, especially against the society, living in the United States, and I live in a very conservative state. So everything I bump up against has very, 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 very hostile training. Let's just put it that way. But one of the things I realized was that I wasn't spending enough time daily enjoying the things that I should be enjoying from this world. For example, getting up in the morning and watching the sunrise, going before I go to bed, watching the sunset, like things that I think really matter, that if I left this world, they would be the things that I would have missed, that had significant importance, instead of, daily fighting my way through it spiritually to get to the end, and then dying, and then also too not, reaching out enough with other people, being present for other people, experiencing that. If you do leave this world and you're, floating around and you're kind of, by yourself, or I should have made the best of what it was here, in the now, to the best of my ability, to the best of my heart, and the best of my love, right?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting subject. It's been given the title of using your death as an advisor, or using the potency of the moment that's continually escaping us as a tool of reckoning, to bring you to a point that you realize the importance of your moment and the absolute unimportance of yourself, and that you can apply yourself to that situation in comparison to that mechanism of consciousness in terms of absorbing the world around you in a way that wakes you up to it because you're not there. But in essence, it's the biggest contradiction there is that you are there, and because you realize that you've already left, you have the possibility to be everything at that particular moment. So this is, it once again comes back to who you are. When you look at a beautiful tree or a beautiful flower, you recognize straight away. Everyone recognizes a beautiful tree, a beautiful flower, a running brook. They recognize immediately that these simple things, a big rock, a big boulder, a statue that's been carved out of rock, a Buddha, you realize, oh, how amazing that is. So you realize that you're seeing yourself. And then you realize you're in a state of communion because of the beauty of that phenomena, the running brook or the still flower that watches you from its hidden perspective of realizing that the song it's singing in terms of the frequency that allows it to be aware is actually running through you like the river that you can't see. And then you realize that you are the plant, and the plant speaks through you.
Yeah, well, and it's a whole other level, of being. And I didn't, going through it, I didn't want to miss it. I'm like, I'm done running through this world. And kind of after our last interview, I just really put a stop to it. And was, what am I running towards? My death? The physical death, and not really noticing as much as I possibly could in the now. And those, I don't know about you, but those are actually, those little teeny moments are the ones that are bringing a whole bunch of like joy and light into my life on a daily basis these days. Are you there? Should I legit?
Yeah,
well,
I'm here. I'm watching you.
I can be in major crisis, in the city, and I can get out of my car in a parking lot, and I can notice, like a beautiful plant that has like decided to grow up through the crack, in the pavement, and I can just stop and kind of, I don't know if value it is the right word, but look at it, and think about that, and kind of be with that plant and just kind of have like a better understanding that, I'm in the right place at the right time. It's up to me whether I want to choose to enjoy the moment and be in the moment, or it's up to me.
Yeah, what if you looked at it this way? What
Okay.
if you always realized you were in the wrong place all the time? Yeah, I'm in the wrong place, and then you don't have this particular saying that I'm in the right place at the right time. What if you're in the wrong place all the time because everyone's messed everything up? This is a wonderful thing to be in the wrong place all the time, because being in the wrong place at all the time reveals your circumstances to you. As long as you realize that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it's obviously the right place, because the wrong place is the right place to be at the moment, because everybody's messing the planet.
I'm just kind of absorbing that.
So if just say we're all doing the wrong thing and literally living in the personal power that we have available to ourselves, this is the right moment to be in. And to realize that there are so many wrong moments And then to see the dilemma that everybody's caught in within their wrong moments is so enlightening, because it's communicating with those elements that they need to have spoken to, because maybe someone is overworking, maybe somebody's lonely. You recognize those things because they're doing the wrong thing for their life. They feel disconnected. So you give the opportunity to talk to that disconnection and actually really connect with that, because you can see it and they're in the wrong moment. And you're in their wrong moment too, but you can be the best way to help them get a connection. Again, is that those people are going to apply themselves erroneously to your life circumstance and to their own. So they miss their own moral imperative, which is to stand within their personal power. So you just give loving gestures towards what you understand where they are, and you can see the limitations that beset them because of that. And this is truly an act of power, truly an act.
Okay. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. Did you get that?
Okay. Yeah, I did get that, and this is what it made me feel like. All of a sudden, when you started talking about, just accepting or acknowledging that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, that usually when you're engaging,
Of course, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it's also the right time to be in the wrong place.
Right. But it released all this responsibility for me all of a sudden, because being this whole new age paradigm stuff, you're in the right place.
New age paradigm stuff, watch out.
It does. It gives you all this responsibility. So I'm in the right place at the right time, even though everything sucks. So I'm supposed to help do what?
Right place at the right time, but it's the right thing. It's the right place to be in. So you can say like the New Age movement, and say I'm in the right place at the right time, and justify this by using that belief system, because it is basically just a belief system. If you don't arrive in the right place, you can actually justify not being rightfully in that place. But you're in that place whether you like it or not. So you're in the wrong place at the right time. Or in the right time, you're in the wrong place. So that this doesn't release you from responsibility. It actually makes you more responsible, because your moral imperative is to actually not become emotionally involved, not to become entangled with circumstances that are revealing that the people are screaming from within, saying, I'm trapped. My program tells me this is the way I'm going to apply myself, and I'm going to be a real monster. And you recognize they're a monster, and you speak to the best part of that without getting offended.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Yeah.
Amen. No, I'm just kidding.
Amen. God damn it.
Amen. All right. Okay.
Am I sounding like a preacher now? Am I? Oh God.
No, it's good. I like it. I love it. I mean, I wish I was closer to you. That I could attend some of your workshops. I really can't tell people enough. And I only get to be in your vibration, when I interview you. So it's
here's your program going again. You're saying I wish I was with you. I wish all this sort of thing. And my moral imperative is listening to your program. I can use that program for bad things and for good things. And my moral imperative knows that I'm not going to do the good or the bad thing. I'm going to do the right thing. So that we've all got very, very big responsibility in terms of saying, I would say, well, Bridget, let go of the program. You already arrived. You've just got to believe it. So that's taking them. My moral imperative is saying, look, I'm not going to accept that, because I don't want to hear what you just said. And you'll start to then exactly who you're meant to be in your moments as you travel your journey, because it's the only journey you got. And everything that you do is the beginning has an enormous amount of. So if say individuals use a slave language, which is repeated to themselves, and that locks them into an idea. The idea is basically everything you've learned from a book. It's spelling oneself through through the language, through a slave language of actually not releasing you. You know, it's you know, you can say, well, I feel, and I can say, well, I get it. Then you work through that feeling because somebody understands it. But if someone says, I feel I need this and I need that, I need to be with you, then you elevate me. I've got to equalize the circumstance and say, yeah, I get that too. But you've actually got to grow into who you are and be exactly who you are in that moment without the language of a slave in terms of your own idea. And that's all it is, an idea. It's an amazing thing to let go of that, because there's so much power in just being simple, so much power that you can't put yourself down because you want to go further. The only way you can go further from the position you're in is to stop the belief system that maybe you need something else. We all need companionship, real companionship that says, hey, you know, you are exactly who you're meant to be. And whoa, that is so powerful. If everybody started to do that and started to live inside of them and saying, look, I know what you're doing, but I'm not going to do that because it's self-damaging, not only for me for allowing it, but for you for doing it. So then the moral imperative gets in between the two people and say, okay, well, there's self-respect. If there's self-respect, we start to move on and say, what do we need to do next? And then everybody did that, the world would change. In so many amazing ways. We need to know not what is expected to done because of the prospect of what's been programmed into us for us to do. And maybe that's not correct for us, all of us at the moment. We've all got to start reliving our real selves, not rethink it, because we can't fix it by thinking it, because we got into this position by spellbinding words that bind our mind into ideas which give us the illusion that we can't achieve.